Hey guys, welcome back to Doc Loyal Talks Comics, and today we've got a little bit of a different thing for you. A while back I told you that I picked up this Frank Miller Push the Wall when it first came out, and I wanted to talk to you about what I figured out in the first chapter. It is as much an expose on who Frank Miller is and what his motivations are as him trying to teach you early on how to put a comic book together. He tells you about his early life in Vermont, his brothers and sisters, and how they all learned from their father, who had been a carpenter and had been in World War II. And, you know, for somebody who is very polarizing in the business of comics, he's very well versed and very well spoken. He's an intelligent man. For those that try to tear him down, he makes valid points, valid arguments, and in the end, he doesn't preach at you. He merely follows his own philosophy, talking about one of his earliest Daredevil scripts and how he had to go down and talk to the Comics Code Authority when it was still a thing and try to explain to them, hey, this is the story I'm trying to tell, and this is why you cannot stop it. You cannot turn it away. You have to say okay. And he said, you know, these were the button-up shirt types, you know, that had seemingly run Archie Comics back in the 40s and the 50s, and he knew it was going to be a hard sell, but at the end of the day, they said okay. He sold them on the idea that he was trying to push, which was not something stupid. But instead, it was talking about the angel dust, which was a really bad drug that came out during the late 70s and early 80s, and it was almost an epidemic level drug. So he wasn't trying to glorify this drug. Instead, he was using this Daredevil story to show exactly how bad this thing was, the negative connotations, the negative impacts that drugs and alcohol and things of that sort could have on you. You know, I've read a lot of words from writers, and I've studied a lot of art. And some of those people that I fell in love with back in the 80s and the 90s, I'm not going to name any names, but there's one in particular that I really just love his artwork. And it seems like his personal demons have gotten the better of him. He's still with us, he's still around, but his artwork has truly suffered from alcoholism. So one thing that Frank doesn't necessarily say, but I'm going to add this to it, is that you need to keep a clear heart and a clear mind. You need to know the story that you're trying to tell. It's just like this video or this channel. I talk about a lot of different things that aren't just comics. I try to bring things to you guys that I think you'll enjoy, whether it's talking about Spider Noir, the TV show, the Superman movie. I've tried a whole lot of things, and some things have stuck to the wall, and others have not. But at the end of the day, I have to know what this channel is about in order to make compelling stuff that I would watch if I were in your situation. And still, as Frank says, even in the title of the book, and he talks about it in his first chapter, you have to push the wall. You have to not try to destroy things just to destroy things, but you have to go up against those things that you disagree with, understand why you disagree with them, and then present an interesting and worthwhile counterpoint. You can't just be upset about something if your editor comes to you and says, no, we can't do this story this way, we can't run this story. Okay? You can take it one of two ways. You can take it as, okay, let's sit down and talk about it, and you tell me why you think this story doesn't work, and I will in turn tell you whether or not those are elements that are key and central to the story that I wrote the tale that I created with my bare hands. And, and at that point, hopefully we can come to a consensus of, does this have to be in the story? On the other hand, you can just cow to your editor, or cow to your editor-in-chief, or cow to whoever, and say, okay, well, I just won't tell this story then. Not in a smarmy type of way, but you can just let it die on the vine. You can just walk away from it and say, you know what, it wasn't important enough to fight for. I'd love to fight for it, but it wasn't important enough to do that. So this first chapter is really great in giving you, it's not teaching you about composition. It's not teaching you about vanishing points. It's not teaching you about all of those things that a Will Eisner book or a Bern Hogarth book or something like that would teach you. Instead, it's teaching you how to become someone who can defend the points that need to be defended, or know when it's time to back off and say, you know what, there is a better way that I can present this to my readers, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to, instead of force this ideology that I have down their throat, I'm going to kind of come at it from the side, and I'm going to sneak it onto their plate when they're not looking. It's like Brussels sprouts. I love Brussels sprouts. Always have. But some kids absolutely hate green stuff. And you just cannot get that kid to eat a Brussels sprout to save his life or her life. And Frank is saying, don't try to shove it down the kid's throat, but instead, when they're not looking, kind of mix a Brussels sprout in there with something else, like a salad, or even, at the bottom of some mashed potatoes or something like that. And who knows? You might get them to see your side of things. You might get them to see your opinion, and if they don't validate it, then they have to say, thank you for at least trying. Now if it's something that they're allergic to, don't try that. Don't try to kill somebody. I know that you love peanuts. No, if they have a peanut allergy, I am not saying that at all. But in all seriousness, this book is absolutely amazing, and in the first 14 pages, I'm hooked. Frank has done a very admirable job of not only, like I said, telling you about the medium, how he got started in the medium, what made him interested in the medium. Hint, hint, wink, wink, it's EC Comics, like most people of his age. And he still holds a fire that the Comics Code Authority was built purposefully to destroy EC Comics. And I would argue with that. I would say, you know what, you're right. They were built to bring EC down because the level of gore and just horror in these horror comics and these suspense comics at the time, I'm not going to say that the kids weren't ready for them, but society wasn't ready for them. But even today, he was making a comment at the very end of the chapter that he's got a book that collects a bunch of those EC books. And, the first copy of it he read it until the pages started to fall out. And he said, you know what, when I pulled that book, the new copy off of the shelf the other day, I started to notice that the pages were falling out. So, guys, if you get the opportunity to check this book out, I may or may not go through it chapter by chapter, a little bit at a time, but he brings up so many salient points for those of us who want to create, as well as those who are just interested. Who is this guy who, in the 90s, tore up a copy of Wizard and called it, the Devil's Bible, and said that it was trying to destroy comic fandom, comic writers, comic companies, comics as a whole. So check it out, guys. It comes with the highest of recommendations, and I can't wait to dig into chapter 2, and I will be back with a video on at least that chapter. So be on the lookout for that. If you like this kind of comic content, which is something different than what everybody else is talking about, I don't really get into the speculator boom. I don't get into what's hot and what's not necessarily. I don't talk about 17 different variant covers to each book. but at the same time, I do want you guys to be entertained by this content that I bring. So if you like this stuff, like, subscribe to the channel, and come back, because I've got much more content for you tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next video.